Before we begin, a critical safety disclaimer. This video is intended for educational and informational purposes only. The installation of a commercial overhead door involves significant risks, including serious injury or death from falling doors, high-tension springs, and heavy components. This presentation is not a substitute for professional training, certification, or adherence to the manufacturer's specific installation manual for your door model. Always follow all local, state, and federal safety regulations, including OSHA guidelines. Use appropriate personal protective equipment, or PPE, at all times. If you are not completely confident in your ability to perform these tasks safely and correctly, hire a qualified, insured professional. You are responsible for your own safety and the safety of others. I once got a call, a frantic one. A business owner had just installed a brand new 16 by 14 foot insulated steel door, the centerpiece of his new loading dock. Less than 24 hours later, it came crashing down. The whole thing. It crumpled like a tin can, destroyed $1,000 of product on a pallet, and missed a forklift operator by less than 3 feet. The cause? It wasn't a faulty part. It wasn't a cheap door. It was a single measurement off by less than half an inch that created a chain reaction of failure. The installer treated the opening like it was good enough. And good enough cost his client over $10,000 and nearly cost a man his life. That's why we're here. This isn't just a tutorial. This is a masterclass in precision. Over the next several parts, we are going to build from the ground up a complete step-by-step system for installing a commercial overhead door the right way. The safe way. The way that ensures it operates flawlessly for decades, not days. We're going to eliminate good enough from your vocabulary. By the end of this series, you won't just know how to hang a door. You'll understand the physics behind it, the critical failure points, and the professional techniques that separate a top-tier installer from a liability. You will have the confidence and the knowledge to tackle this project and achieve a result that is stronger, safer, and cleaner than 90% of the installations I see in the field. So let's get into it. A perfect installation rests on 3 fundamental pillars. Get any one of them wrong and the entire structure is compromised. Pillar 1, the opening. Pillar 2, the hardware. Pillar 3, the balance. It's that simple and that complex. Everything we do, every bolt we turn, every measurement we take falls under one of those 3 pillars. And today we are starting with the single most important one, the foundation upon which everything else is built. The opening. You can have the most expensive high-performance door on the market, but if you try to install it on a flawed opening, you are guaranteeing failure. The door will bind, it will wear out prematurely, it will leak air, and it can be a serious safety hazard. The opening is the canvas and the door is the painting. A warped canvas will always produce a warped painting. Our job, before a single piece of track or a single panel even comes off the truck, is to ensure our canvas is perfect. And perfection starts with measurement. Not just one measurement. Multiple redundant, verified measurements. Grab your tape measure, a laser level if you have one, and a notepad. We're going to measure the finished opening width at 3 separate points. At the very bottom, in the middle, and at the very top. Write all 3 down. Are they identical? To the 16th of an inch? If not, you need to identify why. A perfect opening is perfectly consistent. Now do the same for the height. Measure the left side, the middle, and the right side from the finished floor to the bottom of the header. Again, write all 3 down. Any variation here tells you that either your floor isn't level, or your header isn't. Both are critical problems we have to address. Next, we look at the surrounding space. This is where amateurs get into huge trouble. First, side room. This is the space from the edge of your door jamb to the nearest obstruction on the wall, like another doorway, a support column, or a conduit. For standard vertical lift track, you need a bare minimum of 3 3/4 inches, but I will tell you right now, professionals budget for 5 to 6 inches. It gives you room to work, room for fasteners, and accounts for any weirdness in the wall. You need this space on both sides of the door. Then the big one, headroom. This is the measurement from the top of the finished door opening to the ceiling or the lowest obstruction, like a beam, a sprinkler pipe, or an HVAC duct. This single measurement dictates what kind of track and spring system you can even use. For standard lift, where the door curves and runs horizontally, you'll typically need about 15 to 18 inches of clear headroom to accommodate the track, the curve, and the spring assembly. If you have less than that, you're looking at low headroom track, which is a different beast. If you have a ton of space, you might be using high lift or even full vertical lift track. The point is, the headroom measurement is non-negotiable. You can't cheat it. Finally, there's backroom. This is the clear distance from the opening back into the building. The measurement needs to be, at a minimum, the height of the door plus about 2 feet. This ensures the door has a place to go when it's fully open, without hitting a wall, a storage rack, or a support beam. Once you have these numbers: width, height, side room, headroom, and backroom, you have the basic blueprint. Now, we have to verify the quality of the structure itself. We're talking about plumb, level, and square. Let's be crystal clear about what that means. Plumb refers to the verticalness of your jambs. Take a 6-foot level and place it on the face of the jamb, and then on the inside edge of the jamb. The bubble needs to be dead center. If a jamb is leaning into the opening at the top or leaning out, the door's rollers will grind and bind in the track on every single cycle. Level refers to the horizontal plane. Your floor must be level across the opening, and the header must be perfectly level. If the floor has a dip or a crown, the bottom of the door won't seal correctly. You'll have gaps that let in wind, rain, and pests. If the header isn't level, the entire door will sit crooked, putting immense stress on the panels and the hardware. Use your longest level or a laser to shoot a line across the header and the floor. Know exactly what you're dealing with. And square means your corners are perfect 90-degree angles. A quick way to check this is the 3-4-5 method. Measure 3 feet up one jamb, 4 feet across the header, and the diagonal between those 2 points should be exactly 5 feet. If it's not, your opening is a parallelogram, not a rectangle, and the door will never ever sit right. Now let's talk about what the door actually attaches to, the jambs. In commercial applications, you'll see wood jambs or steel jambs. If you have wood, it needs to be solid, high-quality lumber, at least a 2x6, and it absolutely must be securely fastened to the building's primary structure. It cannot be just tacked onto the surface. This jamb is going to support the entire weight and operational force of the door. It has to be part of the building. Tap on it. Does it sound hollow or solid? Push on it. Is there any give? Any flex at all is unacceptable. The fasteners holding the jamb to the wall should be robust. Think heavy-duty lag bolts into studs or concrete anchors, not drywall screws. The same principle applies to the header. Above the opening, you need a solid wall surface. This is where the spring assembly, the single heaviest and most powerful component of the door, is going to mount. We need what's called a spring pad or mounting pad. This is a solid piece of lumber, typically a 2x10 or 2x12, that runs the width of the door and is, again, anchored directly into the building structure. You cannot mount a torsion spring system to drywall or flimsy sheet metal. You are anchoring hundreds of pounds of torque. It needs an attachment point as strong as an engine mount. When you have this foundation, a perfectly measured, plumb, level, square opening with solid, unyielding structural support on all sides, you have earned the right to open the boxes and start unboxing the door. You've created the perfect canvas. Anything less, and you're just painting on a crumbling wall. And now, with that pristine canvas ready, the real artistry begins. This is the moment of truth, the transition from prep work to the actual build. Opening these boxes isn't just unpacking, it's a ritual. Do it with intention. Find a large, clean, protected area, a staging ground. Lay down cardboard or moving blankets. The last thing you want is to scratch a brand new powder-coated door section on a gritty concrete floor before it's ever seen the light of day. That's a rookie mistake, and you're not a rookie anymore. Carefully cut the straps and packaging. Don't go at it like a wild animal with a box cutter. A deep slice can permanently scar the face of the top or bottom section, which are often the first things you encounter. Peel back the layers of cardboard and foam like an archaeologist uncovering a priceless relic. Inside, you won't find a single monolithic door. You'll find a kit, a complex, heavy, and potentially dangerous puzzle. And your job for the next hour is to become the master of that puzzle. Before a single bolt is turned, you must lay everything out. I mean everything. This is the single most skipped step by amateurs, and it is the single biggest predictor of failure, frustration, and mid-install trips to the hardware store. This is your mise en place, the chef's practice of preparing and organizing all ingredients before cooking. To skip this is to invite chaos into your kitchen. Start with the largest components, the door sections themselves. Carefully lift them out one by one with a helper if necessary. These are more awkward and heavier than they look. Lean them against a wall in the order they'll be installed. Bottom section first, then the intermediate sections, and the top section last. Make sure they're on a protected surface, not directly on the concrete. Look them over. Check for any shipping damage, dents, dings, or scratches. If you find any, stop. Document it, take pictures, and call your supplier immediately. Don't install a damaged door. Now for the steel. Unpack the tracks. You should have 2 vertical tracks, 2 horizontal tracks, and the flag brackets, the heavy gauge steel angles that connect the vertical and horizontal pieces. Lay them out on the floor in their general orientation. It's like assembling a skeleton on the floor before giving it life. This act of physically placing the components where they will eventually go starts building a powerful mental map of the installation. You begin to see the door not as a pile of parts but as a system. Next, find the hardware boxes. There will likely be several meticulously packed and labeled. Open them all. This is the moment that separates the pros from the people who end up with a half-finished door and a bucket of mysterious extra parts. Create dedicated piles. All the rollers in one pile, all the hinges in another. End hinges, center hinges, separate them. They are not the same. Find the lift cables, the drums, the end bearing plates, and the center bearing plate. Lay them out. Find the torsion tube, that heavy hollow pipe. Lay it near the top of where the door will be. Unpack the springs. Be careful. Even on tension, they are heavy and awkward. Handle them with respect. They are the stored energy, the muscle of the entire system. You now have a sea of metal and parts spread across your floor. It might look overwhelming. Supposed to. But here's the key: find the packing list. That flimsy piece of paper is your Bible for the next 30 minutes. Do not proceed until you have conducted a meticulous, unforgiving inventory. Check off every single item. I don't mean glance at the pile of bolts and assume it's all there. I mean count them. If the list says you need 56 3/8-inch track bolts, you count out 56 3/8-inch track bolts. If it says you need 12 number 3 hinges, you count out 12 number 3 hinges. Why are we this obsessive? Because the entire system is designed with precise tolerances and specific hardware. A track bolt is not the same as a hinge bolt. One is a carriage bolt designed to sit flush. The other is a self-tapping screw designed to bite into steel. Using the wrong one isn't just sloppy. It's dangerous. It can compromise the structural integrity of the door. Imagine a hinge failing on a 400-pound door because you used the wrong fasteners. The consequences are catastrophic. This inventory check is your first and most important safety inspection. More than that, it saves you from the most demoralizing moment in any installation. Getting 80% of the way through late in the day, only to discover you're missing the 2 specific bolts needed to attach the center bearing plate. Everything grinds to a halt. Your momentum is shattered. Now you're either stopping work for the day or making a frantic, time-wasting run to the hardware store for a part that might not even be a perfect match. Don't put yourself in that position. Verify everything is here now before the first tool is ever picked up. As you count, you're also familiarizing yourself with the components. Pick up a center hinge. Feel its weight. Notice how it's different from an end hinge, which has a sleeve for the roller stem. Look at the rollers. Are they standard steel, or did you get upgraded nylon rollers for quieter operation? Look at the bottom brackets. These are the most dangerous components on the door, the ones that hold the lift cables under extreme tension. Recognize them. Respect them. Understand their function is to connect the stored energy of the springs to the weight of the door. By the time you're done, you should have a perfectly organized, fully verified staging area. The door sections are stacked in order. The tracks are laid out on the floor, forming a ghostly outline of the final product. The hardware is sorted into neat, distinct piles: a pile for track bolts, a pile for hinges, a pile for fasteners. You know what every piece is, you know what it's for, and most importantly, you know it's all there. You have transformed chaos into order. You've taken a daunting, confusing kit and turned it into a manageable, understandable project. You haven't even drilled a hole yet, but you've just completed one of the most critical phases of the installation. You've built the foundation of a smooth, efficient, and safe build. You've eliminated the guesswork. Now look at your perfectly plumb and square opening. Look at your meticulously organized components. The canvas is ready. The paints are all laid out. You have a clear vision of what you're about to create. The time for preparation is over. It's time to build the skeleton, to raise the steel framework that will guide this door for decades to come. And it all starts with 2 pieces of steel that serve as the foundation for everything else: the vertical tracks. These aren't just channels for the rollers, they are the absolute arbiters of the door's fate. Every single movement, every cycle for the next 20 to 30 years will be dictated by the precision of their placement. If they are perfect, the door will glide like it's weightless. If they are off by as little as 1/8 of an inch, the door will fight, bind, and eventually destroy itself. There is no room for close enough in this game. Now let's look at one of these tracks up close. It's not just a single piece of steel. It's an assembly. You have the main C-shaped track where the rollers live, and welded or bolted to it is a piece of steel angle. This angle is what will be fastening to the wall. It's the backbone. And running along the outside edge, you'll see a vinyl or rubber weather seal. This is our first line of defense against the elements. Our job is to take this entire assembly and mount it to the jambs, the vertical framework of the door opening, with surgical accuracy. We always start with one side. It doesn't matter if it's left or right, but you pick one, and you make it your anchor, your absolute point of truth for the rest of the installation. I'm starting on the right side. The first thing I do is place the track assembly against the wood jamb. I want the edge of the track to be set back from the opening just enough to allow the weather seal to make perfect contact with the door sections later on, creating a tight seal. A common setback is about ½ an inch, but always check the manufacturer's specs. They've done the math for you. Once I have it positioned, I grab my best friend for this part of the job. A 6-foot magnetic level. Not a 2-foot, not a 4-foot. A 6-foot level. Why? Because a longer level averages out any minor imperfections in the wall, giving you a truer sense of plumb, which is just a fancy word for perfectly vertical. I stick it right onto the face of the track. Now here's a critical detail most people miss. You don't just check for plumb in one direction. You have to check it in 2 directions. First, on the face of the track, making sure it isn't leaning into or out of the building. Second, on the side of the track, ensuring it isn't leaning left or right. Both planes have to be dead-on perfect. If the bubble isn't exactly between those 2 lines, you adjust. You might need to slide the bottom in or out, or use shims behind the track angle if the wall itself isn't flat. You do whatever it takes. You don't move on until that bubble is perfectly centered in both directions. This is a non-negotiable step. Rushing this is like building a house on a crooked foundation. It will only get worse from here. Once I am 100% satisfied that the track is perfectly plumb, I'll clamp it in place. Vice grips are great for this. They act as a third hand, holding the track in its exact position so it can't shift while I prepare to fasten it. Now let's talk about fasteners. The type of fastener you use is dictated entirely by what you're attaching to. In this case, we have solid wood jambs, so the weapon of choice is the lag screw or lag bolt. These are heavy-duty screws with a hex head. You need to pre-drill your holes for these. If you try to just drive a 3/8-inch lag screw directly into wood, you risk splitting the jamb, compromising the integrity of the entire opening. So I'll select a drill bit that's slightly smaller than the shank of the lag screw, drill a pilot hole through the steel angle and into the wood, and then use an impact driver to send the lag screw home. You want these to be tight, incredibly tight. You're not just hanging a picture frame. You're anchoring a system that will be managing hundreds, sometimes thousands of pounds of dynamic force. I'll place a lag screw roughly every 24 inches along the height of the track. Overkill? No such thing. When that door is rattling in a 50-mile-per-hour wind, you'll thank me. If you're going into concrete block, you'd use sleeve anchors. If you're mounting to a steel I-beam, you'd be drilling, tapping, or using specialized fasteners. Know your material. Use the right anchor. So one track is up. It's plumb, it's secure, it's perfect. It is our rock. Now we have to install the second vertical track on the other side. And its installation is governed by one simple, brutal rule. It must be perfectly parallel to the first one. This is where your tape measure becomes the most important tool in your box. We need to ensure the distance between the 2 tracks is exactly the same at the bottom, the middle, and the top. The measurement needs to be identical to the millimeter. This distance is determined by the width of the door itself. A 10-foot wide door needs a 10-foot wide track opening, plus a little bit of clearance, usually about an inch total, so a ½ inch on each side. So for a 10-foot door, the distance between the inside of the tracks might be 10 feet and 1 inch. Again, the manufacturer's manual is your Bible here. Read it. I take my first measurement at the very bottom of the tracks, right on the concrete floor. Let's say the spec is 121 inches. I measure from the inside face of the installed track to the wall on the other side, make a mark at 121 inches, and position the bottom of the second track right on that mark. Then I go to the top. I measure across from the top of the first track, and make another mark at exactly 121 inches on the opposite wall. Now I have my top and bottom reference points for the second track. I place the track on these marks, clamp it, and then I grab my level again. Just like the first track, I need to make sure this one is perfectly plumb in both directions. But I don't trust just the level and my 2 marks. I now perform a series of checks. I take my tape measure and I check the distance between the tracks again. Bottom, 121 inches. Good. Middle about halfway up, 121 inches. Perfect. Top, 121 inches. Golden. If any of those measurements are different, you have a problem. If the top is wider than the bottom, the tracks are splayed out. If the bottom is wider, they're pigeon-toed. Either of these conditions will cause the door rollers to bind, scrape, and pop out of the track, creating a catastrophic failure. The door will literally eat itself alive. So you check and you double-check. You nudge the track, you tap it with a mallet, you use shims if you have to. You do not drill a single hole until you can run your tape measure up and down that opening and it reads the exact same number every single time. This meticulous, almost obsessive checking is what separates a professional 30-year installation from a service call 6 months from now. Once I'm certain, not hopeful but certain, that the second track is plumb and perfectly parallel to the first, I repeat the fastening process. Pre-drill, then drive the lag screws home, securing it to the jamb just as rigidly as the first one. With both vertical tracks securely mounted to the wall, perfectly plumb and parallel, the skeleton of our door is officially taking shape. We have built the rigid, unwavering guides that will carry the immense weight of the door on its vertical journey. It looks simple, just 2 pieces of steel on a wall. But the hidden geometry, the perfect plumb and parallel, is the secret sauce. But the door doesn't just go up. It has to go up, and then turn a corner to lay flat under the ceiling. We've built the vertical highway, but now we have to build the curve and the off-ramp. And that's where things get complicated. We're about to defy gravity, suspending hundreds of pounds of steel horizontally 10 feet in the air. This next step is where the true engineering of an overhead door system comes to life. Installing the horizontal tracks. The horizontal tracks are the bridge between the vertical world and the horizontal one. They carry the entire dead weight of the door when it's open, suspended over whatever, or whoever, is below. Get this wrong and you don't just have a door that binds or squeaks. You have a catastrophic failure waiting to happen. The tolerance for error up here is 0. Absolutely 0. So, before we even think about lifting a single piece of steel, we measure. And then we measure again. Your most important measurement right now is determining the location for your backhangs, the support structure at the very rear of the tracks. This isn't a guess. You need to know the height of the door, add the required headroom for the track radius, and then project that line perfectly level all the way to the back of the building where the tracks will terminate. This is not a job for a 4-foot bubble level. You will fail. This is a job for a self-leveling laser. We set our laser to the exact height of the top of our vertical track, and that brilliant red or green line becomes our non-negotiable guide for the next hour. It is our source of truth. With that laser line painted across the ceiling joists or steel purlins, we can build our backhangs. You'll be working with punched angle iron. It looks like a giant Meccano set for a reason. It's incredibly versatile. But don't let its simplicity fool you. How you assemble it is the difference between a rock-solid installation and a wobbly mess. You are not just hanging a piece of metal, you are building a truss. You need triangulation. We create an L-shaped bracket to hold the track, but then we add a diagonal brace running from the bottom of that bracket up to the ceiling anchor point at a 45-degree angle. This diagonal is everything. It takes the vertical load, the weight of the door, and the lateral load, the side-to-side shaking as the door moves, and transfers it safely into the building structure. Without that diagonal brace, the angle iron will eventually flex, bend, and fail. We build 2 of these, 1 for each side, securing them into the structural members of the ceiling with heavy-duty lag bolts or concrete anchors. They must be perfectly aligned with our laser line and absolutely plumb. These are the anchors for our entire system. Now, we assemble the horizontal track itself on the ground. It connects to that curved piece, the radius, which will then bolt to the top of the vertical track we installed earlier. This connection is critical. We use serrated flange nuts on our track bolts here. Why? Because this joint will experience constant vibration for the next 20 years. A standard nut and lock washer can and will eventually work its way loose. A serrated flange nut bites into the steel, creating a mechanical lock that vibration can't defeat. It's a small detail that professionals know and amateurs forget. With the full horizontal track assembly, the long straight piece bolted securely to the curved radius, it's time to lift. And this is a team lift. Always. This is 20+ feet of awkward, heavy galvanized steel. Trying to wrestle this into the air by yourself is how you end up in the emergency room, or worse, you drop and bend the track, rendering it useless. We get one person on a ladder at the front to guide the radius into place, and another person on a ladder at the back to support the rear of the track. The front person guides the curved section onto the top of the vertical track, slotting it into place like a puzzle piece and loosely putting in a bolt to hold it. Now the entire assembly is hanging, supported at the front by the vertical track and at the back by our second technician. This is where the laser line becomes our best friend again. The technician at the back raises or lowers the track until the top edge is perfectly kissing that laser line. Not above it, not below it. Dead on. While they hold it steady, we bring our pre-assembled back hang support into position and clamp it firmly to the track. We check for level 1 last time, then drive the bolts home, securing the back hang to the ceiling structure. The horizontal track is now suspended, perfectly level from side to side. But here's another secret that separates a professional job from one that just looks right. The track is not perfectly level from front to back. It can't be. We need to build in a slight amount of rise or pitch. This means the back of the track, where we just installed the support, needs to be slightly higher than the front of the track where it meets the vertical section. We're talking about a very subtle incline, maybe an inch of rise over 20 feet of track. Why do we do this? Simple physics. This slight uphill slope ensures that when the door is in the open position, gravity helps keep it open. It won't try to creep shut on its own. More importantly, it helps the top section of the door seat firmly against the header weather stripping when it's closed, creating a positive seal against wind and rain. To achieve this, we simply go back to the front connection, loosen the bolt, and let the track pivot down ever so slightly on our back hang, then retighten. We use a level to check our pitch, ensuring it's consistent and correct. Now we do the exact same thing on the other side. This is a rinse and repeat process, but the stakes are even higher. The second track cannot just be level and pitched correctly on its own. It must be a perfect, flawless mirror image of the first. It must be the same height, have the same pitch, and be perfectly parallel from front to back. We use our laser to confirm the height at the front and the back. We use a tape measure to check the distance between the tracks at the front, the middle, and the back. The numbers must be identical. If you are off by even a quarter of an inch, you're going to create a binding point that will shred the door's rollers and burn out the operator motor in months. Precision is not optional. Once both tracks are hanging independently, perfectly parallel and pitched, we do one final thing that many installers skip. We brace them together. We take a long piece of punched angle and run it across the top, connecting the left back hang to the right back hang. This horizontal cross brace, or strut, locks the two tracks together, preventing them from ever splaying apart or shifting independently under the immense and shifting loads they are about to endure. It turns two separate tracks into one single rigid superstructure. The frame is complete. The steel skeleton is in the air. Before we move on, we perform one last check, the master check for square. We take a tape measure and measure diagonally from the front left corner of the track assembly to the back right corner. We write down that number. Then we measure the opposite diagonal from the front right corner to the back left. If those two numbers are identical down to the 16th of an inch, our assembly is perfectly square. It's a moment of truth. If they match, we know the door will travel on this new highway with effortless precision. If they don't, we find the error and fix it now, because there is no fixing it once the weight of the door is in it. Our tracks are up. A perfect level highway suspended in the sky. But a highway is useless without cars. Next, we bring in the heavy metal. We're going to stack the sections one by one, building this giant steel puzzle from the ground up. And you'll see just how quickly this empty space transforms into a formidable moving wall. The first piece of the puzzle is the bottom section. This isn't just another panel. It's the foundation for the entire door. It's the first line of defense against the elements, the first point of contact with the ground, and if we get this wrong, everything that follows will be a fight. On its base is a thick, flexible rubber seal called an astragal. This is the gasket that will press against the concrete, creating a barrier against wind, rain, and anything else that tries to sneak into the building. Getting this first section perfectly level isn't just a recommendation. It's a non-negotiable law of door installation. We use a 6-foot level to check it, and then check it again. A quarter inch off here translates into a door that binds, scrapes, and wears itself out prematurely. It's like building a skyscraper on a crooked foundation. So we take our time, shimming if we have to, until that bubble is perfectly centered. This is the moment of calm before the storm of steel. With the foundation laid, we begin to dress it for the work ahead. This is where the hardware comes in, the hinges and rollers. It's easy to look at a pile of hinges and think they're all the same, but that's a rookie mistake. The hinges that go in the center of the panel are different from the ones on the ends. The center hinges are pure connection points. Their only job is to join one panel to the next, creating the articulated spine of the door. But the end hinges are the real workhorses. They not only connect the panels but also carry the rollers, the small nylon or steel wheels that will live their entire lives inside the metal tracks we installed earlier. Installing these is a game of precision. Each hinge is pre-drilled to match the holes in the door section. We use self-tapping screws, driving them straight and true. There's no room for error. A loose hinge will wobble, elongating its screw holes over thousands of cycles until it fails. A crooked hinge will put a constant, unnatural stress on the panel, trying to twist it every time the door moves. We tighten them down until they are one with the steel panel. Then we slide the rollers into their sleeves on the end hinges. These little wheels are the unsung heroes. They bear the entire weight of the door, guiding it on its vertical and horizontal journey. We make sure they spin freely, a silent promise of the smooth operation to come. This first panel, now armed with its bottom seal, its hinges, and its rollers, is ready. We carefully slide it into place between the vertical tracks, the rollers finding their home in that cold steel channel. The first piece of our wall is standing. Now for the second section. This is a two-person job, always. These insulated steel sections are deceptively heavy, and losing your grip means damaged panels, or worse, crushed hands. We lift together, a synchronized movement born of practice. The goal is to gently place the second section directly on top of the first. High-quality commercial doors are designed with a tongue-and-groove or shiplap edge. The bottom edge of the new panel has a groove, and the top edge of the panel below has a corresponding tongue. As we lower it, we guide these edges together. You hear a solid, satisfying thunk as they seat. This interlocking design is brilliant. It not only adds immense structural rigidity to the door as a whole, but it also creates an incredibly effective weather seal between the sections. It turns a series of individual panels into a single cohesive unit. Once the second panel is seated, the rhythm begins. It's a dance. We install the end hinges and the center hinges. The self-tapping screws bite into the steel with a high-pitched whine. We slide the rollers into the end hinges, carefully guiding them into the track. The process is identical to the first panel, but now the hinges serve a dual purpose. They hold the rollers for the second panel, and they bolt it securely to the first panel below. Every screw we drive is stitching the steel skin together, making it stronger. We work our way across the panel, hinge screws, roller, next hinge screws. It's methodical. It's repetitive. But in this repetition, the wall grows. With each completed section, the opening gets smaller, the light from outside diminishes, and the sheer scale of what we're building becomes more apparent. We repeat the process. The third section is lifted, seated, and secured. Then the fourth. With each new layer, the door climbs higher. We're no longer just lifting, we're lifting and reaching. The higher we go, the more critical our coordination becomes. We're building a temporary vertical wall of immense weight, held together only by a few screws and balanced precariously on a 1-inch wide concrete ledge. This is why we constantly check our work. Are the rollers moving freely in the tracks? Are the sections seated flush against each other? Is there any sign of binding? Catching a problem now when we can still manhandle a section is infinitely better than discovering it when the full weight of the door and the terrifying tension of the springs are in play. As we stack the middle sections, you can start to appreciate the engineering. This isn't just a barrier. It's a dynamic system. Each hinge is a pivot point, a knuckle. When the door is closed, these hinges lock the panels into a rigid, flat plane. But when the door begins to lift, each hinge will allow a precise degree of movement, letting the entire structure bend and follow the curve of the track without binding. It's a beautiful, brutalist piece of mechanical origami. We're not just stacking steel. We're building potential energy into a system, preparing it for a lifetime of movement. Finally, we reach the top. The last section. This one is special. It doesn't get a standard set of hinges on its top edge. Instead, it gets a top fixture or a top bracket. This piece of hardware is significantly beefier than a standard hinge, and for good reason. This bracket is the termination point for the lift cables. All the power generated by the torsion spring system, all the force required to lift this several hundred-pound wall of steel against gravity, will be channeled through two steel cables, and those cables will attach directly to these top fixtures. They are built to withstand constant, incredible tension. We bolt them on with the same precision as everything else, but with a heightened sense of respect for the forces they're designed to handle. This top section, once in place, completes the vertical assembly. The opening is now completely covered. From the floor to the header, We have a solid, uninterrupted wall of insulated steel. It's a major milestone. The door exists as a complete plane, but right now it's a dead weight, a static, immovable object. It's a wall, but it's not yet a door. The rollers are sitting in the vertical tracks, but they have nowhere to go. The next crucial step is to give them their path, to build the horizontal highway in the sky that will allow this wall to defy gravity and disappear above our heads. This highway begins not with asphalt and concrete, but with skeletal fingers of steel reaching down from the ceiling. These are the backhangs, the suspension system for our entire horizontal track assembly. And getting them right is the difference between a door that glides for 30 years and one that tears itself apart in 30 days. Before we even think about touching the horizontal tracks themselves, we must first find our anchor points in the ceiling. This is a moment of truth. You need to anchor into something solid, something with integrity. We're looking for steel I-beams, wooden trusses, or concrete purlins. Attaching a multi-hundred-pound door system to mere sheet metal decking or drywall is a recipe for absolute catastrophe. You are not just hanging a track. You are creating a point of suspension that will endure tens of thousands of cycles of stress, vibration, and torque. So, you identify your solid structural members. Now we use perforated angle iron. This stuff is the erector set for door installers. It's strong, versatile, and adjustable. We'll cut lengths of this angle iron to drop down from the ceiling to the approximate height where our tracks will live. We secure them with heavy-duty fasteners appropriate for the structure, thick lag bolts for wood, concrete anchors for masonry. Don't skimp here. The hardware you use is the only thing preventing gravity from winning. And for now, we leave them hanging, a series of vertical steel supports waiting for their payload. Now we can finally grab the first horizontal track. Look at this piece. It's not just a simple L shape. It has a continuous curve, a radius that perfectly matches the top corner of the vertical track. This is where the magic happens, the transition from vertical lift to horizontal storage. This curve is the most critical piece of geometry in the entire system. If it's not perfectly aligned with the vertical track, every single roller will bump, grind, and fight its way through the corner, sending shutters through the door and wearing out components at an alarming rate. We lift the heavy track assembly into place. This is a two-person job, no question. One person supports the back of the track while the other focuses on the connection point. The horizontal track bolts directly to the flag angle, that big L-shaped bracket at the top of the vertical track. We'll slip the bolts through, but we won't tighten them down completely just yet. Everything stays finger-tight for now. We need the ability to make micro-adjustments. The back of the track is now supported by one of those angle iron backhangs we just installed. We'll use a bolt and nut to temporarily cradle it in place. The first track is up. It's hanging, suspended between the wall and the ceiling anchor. But it's not right. Not even close. Now begins the true art form: leveling and pitching. This is where patience and precision pay off in dividends. First, we need to make sure the track is level across its width. We place a level on top of the track, perpendicular to its length. We adjust the connection at the backhang until that bubble is perfectly centered. If one track is even slightly canted, the rollers will bind, creating friction and putting immense strain on the opener. Once it's level side to side, we address the pitch. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of overhead door installation. The horizontal track should not be perfectly level from front to back. It needs a slight, almost imperceptible upward slope as it goes back into the building. We're talking about maybe an inch or two of rise over the entire length of the track. Why? It's a brilliant piece of simple physics. This slight pitch ensures that when the door is closed, gravity gently pulls the door forward, pressing the top section tightly against the header seal and the vertical tracks tightly against the side jambs. It creates a weather-tight, secure seal without any complex machinery. Without that pitch, the door would hang slightly away from the opening, allowing wind, rain, and dust to get in. So, we place our long level along the top of the track running from front to back. We'll slowly raise the back of the track, adjusting it at the back hang, watching the bubble. We're not looking for the bubble to be centered. We're looking for a specific, consistent offset, indicating a gradual, deliberate incline. A good rule of thumb is about a 1/4 inch of rise for every foot of track length. Once we have that perfect pitch, we lock it in. We tighten the bolt at the back hang. Then we go back to the front and tighten the bolts connecting the horizontal track to the flag angle. That first track is now a permanent, precisely angled piece of the puzzle. But it's also alone. A single rail is useless. We need to create its perfect twin. Everything we just did for the first track, we now have to replicate on the other side with surgical accuracy. The second track must be a perfect mirror image. It must be at the exact same height, have the exact same pitch, and be perfectly parallel to the first one. Any deviation means the door will try to twist as it operates, crabbing sideways in the opening, leading to catastrophic failure. This is where a laser level becomes your best friend. We shoot a laser from a reference point on the first track, say the bolt where it connects to the flag angle across the opening to the other side. That gives us our starting height. We lift the second track, connect it loosely at the front, and adjust it until it kisses that laser line. Then we go to the back. We use the laser again, or a long straight edge with a level, to transfer the height from the back of the first track to the back of the second. We are meticulously building two perfectly matched, parallel planes in mid-air. Once the height and pitch of the second track match the first, we tighten everything down. But we're not done. The tracks are pitched and level, but they can still sway from side to side. We need to add lateral bracing. We take more of that perforated angle iron and run it diagonally from the back hangs to another solid point on the ceiling, creating a rigid triangle. This X-bracing, or sway bracing, is non-negotiable on a commercial installation. It locks the entire rear of the track system into a solid, immovable structure that won't flex or wobble when the door is in motion. Finally, we perform the check of all checks. We take a tape measure and measure the distance between the two tracks at the very front. Let's say it's 10 feet 2 inches. Now we go to the very back and measure the distance between the tracks there. It must be 10 feet 2 inches. Exactly. Then, for the ultimate test, we measure diagonally from the front left corner of the track to the back right corner. We get a number. Then we measure the other diagonal from the front right to the back left. Those two numbers must be identical. When they are, you know your system is perfectly square, perfectly parallel. You've built a flawless foundation. Take a step back and look. What was once empty airspace is now framed by two gleaming steel rails. A perfect, rigid pathway climbing gently towards the back of the building. We've done it. We've built the highway. The path is clear. But the vehicle for this highway, the door itself, is still just a massive inert wall. It has no power, no life, no ability to make the journey we've so carefully prepared for it. It is a sleeping giant. And to wake it, we need to introduce it to the single most powerful and dangerous component in the entire system. The source of all the lift, the heart of the machine. The torsion spring assembly. It's a common misconception that the electric opener does all the heavy lifting. Doesn't. The opener is just the guide. It provides the initial push and controls the start and stop. The real muscle, the brute force that makes a 1,000-pound steel door feel weightless, is coiled right here. This assembly is a carefully engineered system for storing and releasing an incredible amount of mechanical energy. Get it right, and the door glides like a feather. Get it wrong, and this assembly becomes one of the most dangerous pieces of equipment in any building. This isn't a warning to scare you. It's a warning to focus you. Respect the physics, follow the steps, and you will tame this power for yourself. The entire torsion assembly is built around a central component, the torsion tube or shaft. This is a hollow heavy-gauge steel pipe. It doesn't twist or flex. Its job is to act as a solid axle, transferring the rotational force from the springs uniformly across the top of the door. Riding on this shaft are several key parts. First, the cable drums. There's one at each end. These grooved, cast aluminum or steel wheels are what the lift cables will wind onto, pulling the door up. Next are the end bearing plates. These are heavy steel plates with a high-quality bearing in the center that will support the ends of the shaft and attach to the vertical track assembly. In the middle, you have the spring anchor bracket or center bearing plate. This is the immovable object, the anchor point that holds the stationary end of the springs, allowing the other end to build up torque. And finally, the springs themselves. For a commercial door, you'll almost always have two springs, though for extremely large or heavy doors, you might see four. These aren't just random coils of steel. They are meticulously engineered based on the door's weight, height, and the size of the drums. They are designated as either left wind or right wind. This is critically important. A right wind spring can only be used on the left side of the door, and a left wind spring can only be used on the right side. Sounds completely backward, but there's a simple reason for it. The designation refers to the direction the coils are wound, and to properly tension them, you have to push up on the winding bar. If you were to install them on the wrong sides, you'd have to pull down on the bar to tension them, a position that gives you no leverage and puts you in extreme danger of the bar slipping and flying out of your hands. How do you tell them apart? Manufacturers use a simple color code. The winding cone, the solid metal plug at one end with holes for the winding bars, will be painted. Red is for right wind. Black is for left wind. Remember, this mnemonic, red on the right, means you've done it wrong. The red winding cone, the right wind spring, always goes on the left side of the door when you're standing inside the building looking out. The black cone, the left wind spring, goes on the right. Before we even think about lifting this heavy and awkward assembly into place, we build the entire thing on the ground. This is safer, faster, and far more accurate. Lay the torsion tube on a pair of sawhorses. First, find the exact center of the tube and mark it with a pencil. Now take your spring anchor bracket and slide it onto the tube, aligning its center with your mark. Don't tighten it down yet. Next, grab your springs. Let's start with the left side of the door, which means we need the right wind spring, the one with the red winding cone. You'll notice each spring has two cones, a stationary cone on one end and the winding cone on the other. The stationary cone is the one that will attach to the central anchor bracket. Slide the spring onto the left side of the shaft, with the stationary cone facing the center bracket. Push it all the way up so the cone rests against the bracket. Now, take the two massive bolts provided and secure the stationary cone to the anchor bracket. These bolts will bear the full, immense force of the wound spring, so tighten them to the manufacturer's specified torque. Now grab a cable drum. Look closely at it. Like the springs, they are side-specific. They'll be stamped with an L for left or an R for right. The grooves on the drum are angled to ensure the cable wraps cleanly without fraying. Slide the correct drum for the left side onto the shaft. Finally, slide the end bearing plate onto the shaft, with the bearing race facing inward toward the drum. That's one side of the assembly built. Now, simply repeat the exact same process for the other side, using the black, left wind spring and the right hand drum. When you're done, you should have a fully assembled torsion system, ready to be lifted into its final position above the door. This next step is not a one-person job. The assembly is not just heavy, it's long and incredibly unbalanced. You need two people and two sturdy ladders. Each person takes an end and you walk it over to the door. Carefully lift it up and rest the ends of the torsion tube on the top of the horizontal tracks you installed earlier. The goal now is to get the end bearing plates attached to the flag angles and the center anchor bracket secured to the header. Let's start at the center. You need to find the exact vertical center line of your door opening. Use a tape measure and a level and mark it clearly on the header. Now slide your entire torsion assembly left or right until the center of your spring anchor bracket is perfectly aligned with that mark. The bracket must be fastened to solid structural wood, the header or dedicated blocking. It cannot just be attached to drywall or thin sheathing. If you don't have a solid mounting surface, you must add one. This bracket is the single point holding back all the stored energy. Any failure here is catastrophic. Use hefty, half-inch or larger lag screws, at least 4 of them, and drive them deep into the structural member. Make sure the bracket is perfectly plumb and absolutely solid. With the center locked in, we move to the ends. The end bearing plates attach directly to the top of the flag angles on the vertical track assemblies. There should be pre-drilled holes waiting for you. Lift the end of the shaft slightly, slide the bearing plate into position against the flag angle, and loosely install the bolts. Don't tighten them yet. Do the same on the other side. Now, we need to ensure the torsion tube is perfectly level. A shaft that isn't level will cause the door to open unevenly, putting stress on the cables, rollers, and the opener. Place a long level across the top of the torsion tube. Adjust the end bearing plates up or down in their slotted holes until that bubble is dead center. Once it's perfect, tighten the bolts on both end bearing plates completely. Your entire torsion assembly is now securely mounted to the wall and the tracks. The final step in this stage is to set the cable drums. Slide each drum inward along the shaft until it is almost touching the race of the end bearing. You want about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of space. This ensures the drum spins freely without binding. Now rotate the drum so that the set screws in its hub are facing up, making them easy to access. Using the correct size wrench or Allen key, tighten these set screws down onto the shaft. And I mean tighten them. These screws prevent the drum from slipping on the shaft when the spring's torque is applied. A slipping drum means the door will immediately go crooked and jam in the tracks. Most commercial drums have 2 set screws. Tighten them both with equal, significant force until they won't budge. Take a step back and look at what you've built. The entire lifting mechanism is in place. It is a beautiful piece of mechanical engineering, poised and ready. But right now it has no power. The springs are relaxed, holding no tension. The giant is still asleep. In our next step, we perform the single most dangerous and most critical procedure in the entire installation. We are going to wake the giant. We are going to wind the torsion springs. This is not a moment for bravado. It's a moment for respect. Respect for physics, respect for potential energy, and respect for the sheer unadulterated power we are about to store in these coils of steel. Before you even think about touching a winding bar, let's talk about your tools and your position. You need 2 solid steel winding bars made specifically for this job. Not rebar. Not a giant screwdriver. Not the handle from your floor jack. Those tools will bend or shear or slip, and the result is catastrophic. They are not your friends here. They are a liability that could send you to the emergency room. Your winding bar should fit snugly into the holes on the winding cone, with minimal play. A sloppy fit is a recipe for disaster. Now your body. You will never, ever position your head or torso in the rotational path of these bars. Imagine a giant, invisible propeller spinning where these bars are. Your job is to stay out of that death zone. You will stand to the side, firmly planted. Your feet are your anchor. You will have a clear, unobstructed path to retreat if you need it. No tool bags to trip over, no stray materials. This is a sterile field. Okay. The door is locked down with the C-clamps and vice grips. The shaft is stationary. The set screws on the winding cone are loose. Take your first winding bar and insert it fully into the bottommost hole on the cone. You want it to seat all the way in. Feel it. It should feel solid, a direct connection to the spring. Now, with both hands on that bar, you are going to apply upward pressure, rotating the cone in the direction that tightens the spring. For a standard installation, this is almost always pushing the bar up towards the ceiling. You are going to feel the spring's first resistance. It's just a little nudge, a hint of the power to come. Lift it just enough so the cone comes off the shaft and you'll feel the tension. Push up a quarter turn 90 degrees. The next hole on the cone should now be at the bottom, facing directly at you. Hold that pressure. Do not relax. The giant is stirring. Take your second winding bar in your other hand and insert it fully into that newly exposed bottom hole. Push it all thin until it stops. Now, and only now, do you have a redundant safety. 2 bars are in the cone. The force is distributed. You can breathe for a second. With the second bar securely in place, you can now remove the first bar, the one that is now pointing straight up. Pull it out and you'll feel the entire load transfer to that bottom bar you're holding. Now you repeat the motion. Push that bottom bar up a quarter turn. The next hole appears. Insert the first bar. Remove the second. This is the rhythm. It's a slow, deliberate, powerful dance. Up a quarter turn. Insert. Remove. Up a quarter turn. Insert. Remove. With each quarter turn, you are pouring energy into that spring. You will feel the resistance build exponentially. The first full rotation is easy. The second is tougher. By the time you're on the 5th, 6th, 7th rotation, you are fighting a tremendous amount of force. The bar will feel alive in your hands, wanting to rip itself free and fly downwards. Your grip must be absolute. Your focus must be total. This is why you never take your eyes off those holes. You never guess. You see the bar go in, you feel it seat before you even think about removing the other one. So how many turns? This isn't guesswork. This is math. The manufacturer provides a chart, or your door supplier will tell you. A common number for a 12-foot high door is around 8.5 full turns. That's 34 quarter turns. You must count every single one. Don't lose track. Don't get distracted. Every quarter turn adds another calculated amount of lift, another measure of potential energy. Too few turns and the door will be heavy and won't stay open. Too many turns and you've created a monster. The door will be hot, flying open on its own and refusing to close. You could even exceed the tensile strength of the spring itself, causing it to fracture and explode. So you count. 1, 2 for each quarter turn, a deliberate counted step. Let's say the spec is 8.5 turns. You've done 34 quarter turns. You're holding the final position with 1 bar, likely pointing straight up or straight out, fighting the full furious tension of a now wide-awake giant. It is begging to be released. Your muscles are burning. Your focus is laser sharp. Do not let go. Now comes the most delicate part of this brute force procedure. While holding that immense tension steady with one hand on the winding bar, you need to take your other hand and tighten the set screws on the cone. This is what locks all that stored energy in place, connecting the wound spring to the torsion shaft. You'll have 2 set screws, usually square-headed bolts. Use a wrench or a socket. First, tighten them both down until they are snug. Just hand tight. You're just taking up the slack. Now the final torque. The industry standard is to tighten them until they're snug, and then give them another 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. You will feel the screw bite into the hollow steel of the torsion shaft. This is intentional. That screw needs to physically deform the shaft, creating a small divot, a mechanical lock. Without that bite, the rotational force of the spring can over time cause the cone to slip on the shaft. And a slipping cone means an instant explosive release of all that energy. So you give it that final confident turn. You are commanding that spring to stay put. Once both set screws are fully torqued, give the winding bar a tiny nudge, just a fraction of an inch in both directions. You're feeling for any slip or give. It should feel completely, utterly solid, as if the cone and the shaft have become one single piece of steel. Only when you are 100% certain it is locked, can you slowly, carefully remove that final winding bar. And there it is. One spring is wound. It sits there humming with power. It looks the same as it did before, but it is a completely different animal now. It holds enough power to lift hundreds of pounds of steel, or to break bones. Now, you move to the other spring and you do the exact same thing. The same number of turns. The same deliberate rhythm. The same respect. The two springs must be balanced, perfect mirror images of each other in the tension they hold. With both springs wound and both winding cones securely tightened to the shaft, the most dangerous part is over. The giant is awake, and it is chained to the shaft. But right now, that power has nowhere to go. The shaft is still locked in place by our vice grips on the track. The door itself is still a dead weight, held up by the C-clamps. The system is armed, but it's not yet active. We have created a reservoir of immense power, and now we have to connect it to the load. The next step is to attach the lift cables, to finally bridge the gap between the power of the springs and the weight of the door. These cables are the tendons of the system, the vital link that translates the rotational energy of the torsion tube into the linear lift that will raise this massive wall of steel. On one end, you have the bottom bracket bolted firmly to the lowest section of the door. On the other, the cable drum, keyed and locked to the torsion shaft itself. Our job is to create an unbreakable connection between these 2 points. Before we even touch a cable, let's talk about what this is. This isn't just a piece of wire rope. This is a precisely engineered aircraft-grade steel cable, designed to handle thousands of cycles under immense, unforgiving tension. When this door is in motion, this cable will carry a load equivalent to the entire weight of the door, minus the assistance from the springs. If it fails, the results are catastrophic. It's not a gradual failure. It's an explosive release of energy. A cable that snaps under load doesn't just fall. It whips through the air with enough force to cut through steel, to say nothing of flesh and bone. This is why every single step we take from this moment forward must be done with surgical precision and an unwavering focus on safety. There are no shortcuts here. There are no good enoughs. There is only the right way. Let's begin at the foundation. The bottom bracket. Each cable comes with a pre-swaged loop on one end. This loop is the anchor. It slides over a dedicated pin or post on the bottom bracket. It's a simple, robust connection. Slide the loop on. For some brackets, a cotter pin or a retaining clip secures it. Make sure that retainer is seated perfectly. It's a small part playing a massive role. It ensures that no amount of vibration or movement can ever dislodge that cable loop from its anchor. Before you even think about routing the cable, give it a firm tug. It should be absolutely solid. This is your last chance to confirm the integrity of the bottom bracket's connection to the door itself. All the force is about to be channeled through this single point. If those bolts are loose, you're not just lifting a door. You're actively trying to rip the corner off the bottom section. Check them one last time. Now, with the cable anchored, we begin its journey upward. The path is critical. The cable must run perfectly straight, perfectly vertical, from the bottom bracket up towards the cable drum. It travels in the space between the door sections and the vertical track. It must not, under any circumstances, be allowed to rub against the track, the rollers, or the bolts of the hinges. Think of it like a rope passing through a series of pulleys. Any friction is a point of wear, a future point of failure. Guide the cable with your hand, ensuring its path is clear and unobstructed all the way to the top. As you get to the top of the vertical track, the cable will naturally align with the cable drum waiting above. This brings us to the most critical connection, attaching the cable to the drum. The drum has a small slot, just big enough for the cable to pass through from the outside to the inside. You'll also see 1 or 2 hefty set screws. These screws are what will clamp the cable in place. First, you need to make sure the door is fully down and seated against the floor. This is non-negotiable. The door must be in its lowest possible position. Now, take the loose end of the cable and feed it through that small slot in the drum. Pull a few inches of cable through to the inside. Now look closely at the drum. You'll see spiral grooves machined into its surface. These grooves are the track the cable will follow as it winds onto the drum. It is absolutely essential that the cable is positioned to wind perfectly within these grooves. If it's off and the cable jumps a groove, it will change the effective diameter of the drum, causing that side of the door to lift faster than the other. The result is a crooked door that will bind, jam, and ultimately destroy itself. So, position the cable so it's sitting flush against the drum, ready to feed into that first groove. With the cable in position, it's time to lock it down with the set screws. Using the correct size wrench or socket, tighten those set screws. And I mean tighten them. These tiny screws are all that prevent the cable from slipping. The force trying to pull this cable out of the drum will be immense. You need to apply significant torque, enough to slightly crush the cable within the drum, creating a mechanical lock that is stronger than the cable itself. Once you've tightened the first one, do the second one, then go back and check the first one again. They must be rock solid. Repeat this entire process, bottom bracket, routing, and drum connection for the other side of the door. The steps are identical. Now both cables are connected, but they're just hanging there loose and useless. The springs are wound, holding all that potential energy, but the cables are slack. We haven't transferred any of that power yet. The next step is arguably the most nuanced and critical part of the entire installation: setting the initial cable tension. Both cables must be under the exact same amount of tension before the springs are allowed to do their work. If one is even slightly looser than the other, the door will lift unevenly from the very first inch of travel. It will rack, it will bind, and it will be a nightmare to balance. So, how do we achieve perfect equal tension? First, we need to lock the torsion shaft in place so it can't spin. The springs are desperately trying to turn it, but our winding bars are holding them back. We need a third hand, a mechanical one. This is where a large pair of locking pliers, often called vice grips, becomes the most important tool in your bag. Clamp the pliers tightly onto the torsion shaft right in the middle. Then, rotate the shaft just enough so the handle of the pliers rests firmly against the wall or header above the door. This creates a powerful temporary brake. The pliers, braced against the solid structure of the building, are now preventing the shaft from unwinding. Double check it. The pliers must be tight on the shaft, and the handle must have a solid, unmovable point of contact. This is a critical safety step. With the shaft locked, you can now carefully, and I mean carefully, remove your winding bars. The locking pliers are now holding back all that stored energy. Now we can focus on the cables. One at a time, you're going to manually pull the slack out of the cable and rotate the drum until the cable is taut. You'll feel it go from loose to snug to tight. You want it guitar string tight. Once it's taut, you need to lock the drum to the shaft. Using your wrench, tighten the set screws on the cable drum itself, the ones that lock it to the shaft. These are different from the screws that hold the cable. These lock the drum's position rotationally. Tighten them down hard. Now move to the other side and do the exact same thing. Pull the slack out of the second cable until it feels just as tight as the first. This is where feel and experience come in. A good way to check is to pluck both cables. They should produce a similar tone, a similar thrum. If one sounds like a loose bass string and the other a tight guitar string, they're not equal. You must loosen the drum's set screws, adjust, and retighten until they feel and sound the same. They must be perfectly balanced. Take your time here. Rushing this step will ruin the entire installation. Once you are absolutely confident that both cables are equally taut and both cable drums are locked down tightly to the shaft, it's time for the final verification. Go back and check every single set screw you've touched. The ones holding the cable in the drum, the ones holding the drum on the shaft. Check the locking pliers holding the shaft. Everything must be perfect. What we have now is a fully integrated system on the verge of activation. The springs are loaded. The shaft is locked. The drums are secured. The cables are attached and perfectly tensioned, connecting the power source to the load. Every component is in its place, held in a state of suspended animation. The entire system is under tension, held in check only by that one pair of locking pliers. We have built the engine, connected the transmission, and now the entire machine is humming with potential, waiting for the final command to release. We are on the precipice. The system is armed. All that remains is the final irreversible act of releasing that brake and allowing this immense power to flow for the very first time. and with a firm, steady hand, the brake lever is disengaged. There is no fanfare, no explosion, just a sudden, profound shift in the universe of the machine. A deep, resonant thrum vibrates through the steel as the torsion springs, for the very first time, accept the full, colossal weight of the door. It's a moment of pure physics, a transfer of immense potential energy into kinetic reality. The slack in the chain vanishes. Every link pulls taut, a sinew of steel connecting the motor's ambition to the door's inertia. The entire assembly, once a collection of disparate parts, is now one single interconnected organism, breathing, waiting. The silence that follows is heavier than any sound, pregnant with the promise of motion. Now we press the button. The contactor in the operator clicks with the satisfying finality of a judge's gavel. The motor winds to life, not with a struggle, but with a confident, controlled surge of power. The sprocket turns and the chain begins its slow, inexorable climb. The first section of the door lifts from the concrete, breaking a seal that has existed only in theory until this very second. It rises smoothly. There is no shudder, no protest, no grinding of metal on metal. This is the moment of truth. We are not just watching a door open. We are listening to the story it tells. Is there a scraping sound? That's a track out of alignment. A rhythmic clicking? That could be a roller binding or a chain link catching. But here, there is only the clean mechanical hum of a system in perfect harmony. The sections articulate at the hinges, one after another, making the graceful transition from the vertical to the horizontal plane. It's a mechanical ballet, choreographed by hours of precise labor. The door glides up, a curtain of steel revealing the world outside, until it comes to a gentle stop at the top of its travel, resting on the horizontal tracks. It hangs there, perfectly balanced, a testament to the equilibrium we so painstakingly achieved. The first half of its maiden voyage is complete, but the journey isn't over. We press the close button. The motor reverses and gravity is now its partner, not its adversary. The descent begins. This is where the operator's control is truly tested. It's not just letting the door fall. It's guiding its immense weight down with unwavering precision. We watch the bottom weather seal as it approaches the floor. We're looking for a perfect, even compression along the entire width of the opening. It touches down with a soft, satisfying sigh of rubber against concrete, sealing the building from the elements. The motor stops. The cycle is complete. The machine has performed its primary function flawlessly. Now we must teach it its boundaries. We must set the limits. This is the critical process of telling the operator precisely where to stop in both the up and down directions. On most modern operators, this is done by adjusting a series of cams or contacts on a limit shaft. Think of it as setting the chapter markers in the door's story. We run the door up to the exact position we want it to stop, fully clear of the opening, but not so high that it puts stress on the operator or the top fixture. Then we adjust the up limit cam until it clicks, telling the machine, here. This is your home in the open position. Go no further. The process is repeated for the closed position. We bring the door down until the bottom seal is perfectly compressed against the floor, creating a tight, secure barrier. Not so tight that it strains the motor, but not so loose that it allows in drafts, water, or pests. We then adjust the down limit cam. Click. The lower boundary is set. The door now has its defined operational space. It knows its beginning and its end. We will cycle the door a half dozen times, watching it stop at these newly defined points with repeatable accuracy. Each time it hits its mark, our confidence in the system grows. It is no longer just a machine. It is a reliable, predictable servant. With the physical boundaries established, we now turn to the most important phase of the entire installation: the implementation and testing of the safety systems. A machine this powerful carries with it an immense responsibility, and these systems are its conscience. First, the photo eyes. These are the electronic sentinels. We mount the emitter and the receiver on the vertical tracks, no more than 6 inches off the floor. Their job is to project an invisible beam of infrared light across the opening. They must be perfectly aligned. We adjust the receiver until its small LED indicator glows solid, a tiny beacon of confirmation that the link is established. The beam is live. Now we test its vigilance. We press the close button. As the door descends, we simply break the beam with our foot. Instantly, without hesitation, the motor stops its downward travel and reverses, sending the door back to its fully open position. We test it again and again. We test it on the left side, the right side, the center. We must be absolutely certain that this invisible tripwire will never fail in its duty. It is the primary non-contact line of defense. Next, we test the secondary system, the reversing edge. This is the physical guardian attached to the bottom of the door. Whether it's a pneumatic hose or an electric, touch-sensitive strip, its principle is the same. If the door makes contact with an obstruction, the edge senses the pressure and signals the operator to reverse. To test this, we place a solid object like a 2x4 flat on the floor in the door's path. We start the close cycle. The door descends, its rubber seal making contact with the wood. The instant it feels this resistance, the split second the edge compresses, the system reacts. The downward momentum ceases, and the door immediately begins to climb. This is the failsafe that protects people and equipment from the crushing force of the door. This test is not optional. It is a moral and professional obligation. Finally, we fine-tune the operator's own internal force sensitivity or clutch. This is the machine's sense of touch. It's calibrated to use just enough force to move the door, and no more. If the door should bind in the tracks or encounter an unexpected obstruction that the other safety systems somehow miss, the operator will feel the excess strain on the motor and stop. We set it carefully, finding the delicate balance between reliable operation and sensitive protection. Too sensitive, and the door might stop on a windy day. Not sensitive enough, and it becomes a hazard. It's the last layer in our web of safety, a system of redundant protections designed to make this powerful machine fundamentally safe. The installation is complete, but our work is not done. Now comes the final inspection, the craftsman's last pass. We walk the entire system. We put a wrench on a representative sample of fasteners, track bolts, hinge bolts, spring anchor bolts, ensuring everything is torqued to spec. We lubricate the rollers, the hinges, and the bearing plates, giving the system the lifeblood it needs for a long and smooth operational life. We wipe down the door sections, removing any fingerprints or grease from the installation process. We gather all our tools, sweep the floor, and remove every last scrap of debris. We leave the site cleaner than we found it. This is the handoff. We have taken an empty, vulnerable opening and transformed it into a secure, automated gateway. We have assembled hundreds of individual components into a single cohesive unit. We've balanced springs, aligned tracks, calibrated limits, and triple-checked safety systems. What was once a pile of steel and hardware is now the face of the building, a bulwark against the storm and a portal for commerce. It represents security, efficiency, and potential. This 10-part journey wasn't just about building a door. It was about understanding a system. It was about respecting the incredible forces at play and engineering them for a safe and productive purpose. From the first measurement to the final safety test, every step was a link in a chain of precision. To have completed this is to have mastered a craft that blends brute force with delicate finesse. This door will now perform hundreds of thousands of cycles, a silent, reliable workhorse serving the life of this building. And every time it moves, it will be a testament to the skill, the knowledge, and the dedication poured into its creation. You didn't just learn how to install a door. You learned how to command steel, how to master torsion, and how to build something that lasts.